You have all read Heating and Cooling, and I know you're like so like fangirl boying right now, and you have your lighters on, and your disco lights that we sent you are going out. But here she is. Alex just reminded us how you made your own heating and cooling books and called them other oppositional things. But I'm going to leave all of that to Alex, who is going to give a fabulous introduction, and then we are so excited to hear Beth Ann read. So I love you, sweetie. I'm sorry I can't really hug you.
Oh.
Here's Alex.
Good evening, everyone. To walk us through all that Beth Ann Fennelly has achieved in the span of her 27-year writing career would take me 11 minutes or more, and I only have 3. From New Jersey to Lake Forest, Illinois, to Mississippi, her geographical and spiritual home. From graduating magna cum laude from Notre Dame to her graduate work as a Lilly Peters Fellow at the University of Arkansas, to her postdoc work as Diane Middlebrook Poetry Fellow at the University of Wisconsin's Institute for Creative Writing. From her husband, Tom Franklin, to her daughter, Clarianne, to her sons, Thomas and Nolan. From judging creative writing contests to contributing to numerous periodicals to being included in over 50 anthologies and many textbooks. From the Academy of American Poets Prize to the Pushcart Prize for the Impossibility of Language, to living in Brazil for a year on a Fulbright, studying the poetry of Elizabeth Bishop. From chapbooks to essays to poetry to nonfiction to fiction to her latest work, Heating and Cooling, 52 micro-memoirs. Beth Ann Fennelly has always excelled, winning fellowships and grants, awards and accolades along the way. However, awards are not what drives her. I tell my students if winning awards becomes their goal, then they will never be satisfied because there will always be more awards to be won. For me, teaching and writing have always been their own rewards. As long as I keep focused on those, I'll always have my priorities straight. If you ask Beth Ann, running the 1998 Chicago Marathon is her greatest accomplishment to date. Babies and baking cookies are 2 things that she knows a lot about. Reading aloud approves one's writing. The state of Nebraska should be avoided at all costs. And as far as I can tell, storytelling and truth-telling are what she believes in. This year alone, Beth Ann Fennelly gave a TED Talk at the University of Mississippi on literature and empathy that has been viewed over 86,698 times. Continued serving as the Mississippi Poet Laureate in a variety of ways and was awarded the Academy of American Poets Laureate Fellowship. As Poet Laureate, she is working toward her goal of visiting 1 school in each of Mississippi's 82 counties, active in the Poetry Out Loud program, visiting the Prison to College pipeline at the Mississippi State Penitentiary, working with the Lynching Memorialization Committee of Lafayette County, serving on the Board of Advisors for the Mississippi Book Festival, emceeing the annual Mississippi Arts Commission Awards ceremony, giving readings of her own work, and planning the inaugural Glitterary Festival, a queer literary festival with a broad definition of what is literature and what is queer, set to take place in Mississippi in April 2021. I honestly don't see myself slowing down after I'm no longer the Poet Laureate, Fennelly said. I've seen how literature helps people think more clearly and prepares them to live their most fulfilling lives, spiritually, intellectually, and creatively. Beth Ann Fennelly has given over 500 readings nationally and internationally. This evening she speaks to us. Without further ado, the brilliant Beth Ann Fennelly.
Oh, Alex, what a great introduction. Thank you so much. That was really sweet. I'm glad this is being recorded. Now, like every time my children are like rude to me, I'm just gonna like key that up and like play it, you know what I mean? And be like, yes, you know. So thank you. That was adorable and very thorough. You get an A, right? You know, Ann Hood, are you listening? She gets an A this semester. Okay, all right. So friends, I'm so happy to be able to visit with you via the magic of the internets. You know, when all this COVID stuff happened and everything canceled, there were a couple obligations I had that, you know, I was a little okay about, and a couple I was a little sad about. There were 2 events I was crushed to have canceled, and this was one of them. You know, I'm a big fan of Ann Hood and Jen. Jen and I were gonna dance. As we did at a AWP disco one year. And Also, your school looks really beautiful, and Newport is supposed to be amazing. So I mourn that I'm not there with you in person, but I'm very happy to be visiting with you this way. So I wanted to read a little bit from Heating and Cooling. I know that y'all have read it. I thought I'd just tell you briefly how I ended up writing this book. So before I wrote Heating and Cooling, I wrote a novel with my husband called The Tilted World. And it's about the flood of the Mississippi River in 1927. And it's a big historical novel. We had to do a lot of research, and we wrote it together, my husband and I, and it took us 4 years, which is like 8 years really. And that's a long time. Like if that book failed, that would have been really bad for all of us for a long time, but it didn't. You know, it came out, it got nice reviews, we were happy, blah, blah, blah. And then afterwards, I thought, oh, I guess I'll write another novel. I'll write one by myself. But I would go to my notebook every morning and I would try to find some idea. And I was just writing down little thoughts or crazy overheard conversations or weird bits of dreams or, you know, zany little memories. And I kept waiting for something to add up to something bigger to create this like arc of narrative. And it kept not happening. And then there came a point when I realized, what if I stopped waiting for these to add up to something? What if they are some things? They're just really small somethings and in a form I don't recognize. No, they don't look like a novel, don't look like an essay, don't look like a poem. What could this thing be? And when I came up with the term micro memoir, it actually gave me permission to keep writing them in a weird way. Like suddenly it was a thing. So I ended up writing a book of them, and I'm pleased to share some with you tonight. I thought I'd start with the first one, Married Love. In every book my husband's written, a character named Colin suffers a horrible death. This is because my boyfriend, before I met my husband, was named Colin. In addition to being named Colin, he was Scottish and an architect. So you understand my husband's feelings of inadequacy. My husband cannot build a tall building of many stories. He can only build a story and then push Colin out of it. So that's the first one in the book. So one thing that writing this book allowed me to do was think about the moment, because these really small pieces help kind of us focus on the moment and see what there's there. Like if you just pack the white space around it and you let the moment resonate by itself for a minute. And, you know, so some of the memories that I'd had that were kind of surfacing, instead of thinking, oh, they don't connect to anything, or they're not important, or that's random, or wow, I wonder why I remember that. I started thinking, what is it about this memory that holds anxiety for me, or that is interesting or compelling? Like when you think about things you remember for 20 years and you don't know why you remember them, maybe you should dwell in them and do some thinking. So I've always remembered this couple I met on an airplane, and I wanted to write about them. So this is called One Doesn't Always Wish to Converse on Airplanes. But this tanned, fit couple, white sweatered like tennis pros, seemed eager to talk. So we talked. No, their final destination wasn't Denver. They'd continued to Hawaii after the layover. Hawaii, I said, how awesome. Is it a special occasion, an anniversary? They grinned at each other like, you tell her. No, you. Their thing, it turned out, was scuba diving with metal detectors. They dove at popular honeymoon spots off Oahu because, they said, the first time those rich Japanese brides hit the water, their new diamonds slid right off. The couple said They didn't always find a ring, but overall they'd found enough to fund their vacations. That's wow, I said. They grinned at each other again and took a sip from their Bloody Marys. Then she gave his biceps a squeeze. Her diamond ring broadcast sequins of light on the tray table. I envisioned how, after netting a big rock, they'd perform exceedingly athletic hotel sex. Their avarice was so unabashed that it was difficult to keep despising them. But I, large of righteousness and small of diamond, persevered all the way to Denver. I'm gonna have a sip of wine. I encourage you all to do the same. So one thing that I really enjoyed writing in this form was because the pieces are so short, you can have immense tonal variation. You know, you can have a piece that's funny, and then you can have a piece that's bitchy, and then you can have a piece that's wry, and then you can have a piece that's sad, and then you can have a piece, you know, you can get all the different emotions in all these little pieces. And because the emotions come so quickly, you don't have to go full on into something until you're bored of it and the reader is too. And there are, you know, as you guys know, some sad threads that go through this book, and this piece kind of introduces it. Small talk at Evanston General. And what is it you do? He asked after a moment of silence. My mother was in the bathroom exchanging her dress for the cotton gown. I had the sense he was asking to fulfill some kind of med school training, engage the patient's loved ones in conversation. 5 outlandish occupations pinged through my head. All lies. But I knew I shouldn't mess with him. I needed to get him on our side and keep him there. I'm a writer, I said. A writer? A light turned on in his eyes, suddenly as blue as his scrubs. He put his fists up and bounced them, a cowboy bounding over the plains. No, I said, a writer, which now seemed to require a gesture, so I held up my imaginary pen and wiggled it. Oh, he said, all business again, as my mother came out of the bathroom. Well, he said, me too. He untied her gown with one hand and slipped the black Sharpie from his scrubs pocket with the other, clamped it between his teeth to remove the cap, then drew dashes on my mother's naked chest to show where his scalpel would go. One of the really fun things about writing this book was seeing how short I could go. And, you know, after writing that novel with Tommy, you know, the high stakes, big pressure 4-year project, you know, it was so liberating in a way to write something that's 1 sentence long. Like, and, you know, it's so freeing. If you write something that's 1 sentence long and it sucks, whoop, just throw it away. Who cares? You know, write another one. And so I just got into this way of trying to like hit the 1 second moment and the 1 sentence moment. And I thought I'd read you some because they were so fun to write. I come from a long line of modest achievers. I'm fond of recalling how my mother is fond of recalling how my great-grandfather was the very first person to walk across the Brooklyn Bridge on the second day. Why I'm switching salons. We can put on a top coat with glitter, said the manicurist. We've noticed you like attention. bitch. That was kind of fun. Oh yeah, and so there's also a series in this book called Married Love, and I wrote it because I was thinking that our culture doesn't really have an ethos to appreciate the love of people who've just been hanging out day after day for a long time. Tommy and I just had our 22nd anniversary. I still like them about 97% of the time, so that's good. But you know, it seems to me songs and movies celebrate first love. Sometimes they celebrate unrequited love, but just the dailiness of being with somebody day after day, it's not really present so much. Maybe it looks boring in a movie, but it's actually kind of wry and complex and funny. So I thought I'm gonna celebrate it a little bit. So here's Married Love 2. There will come a day, let it be many years from now, when our children realize no married couple ever needed to retreat at high noon behind a locked bedroom door to discuss taxes. And this is the shortest one in the book. It's, I'm gonna turn this, I think you have a little glare. I don't want that to be annoying. Shortest one in the book, it's 9 words. Returning from spring break, junior year at Notre Dame. Swapped the rosary on my bedpost for Mardi Gras beads. Married Love 3. As we lower onto the December cold pleather seats of the used minivan, we knock hands, both of us reaching to turn on the other's seat warmer first. So that one's a little, sweet. So this one is maybe a little less sweet, and I'll end the little one-liners with this one. Married Love 4. Morning. Bought a bag of frozen peas to numb my husband's sore testicles after his vasectomy. Evening. Added peas to our pasta carbonara. All right, so I'm going to switch from the little ones and read just a couple longer ones, and then we'll have some questions. And I hope you guys are ready for when the camera switches to you and you're all in your pajamas or wearing Anne's pajama face, which I would personally love. So I wrote this one because I was at a reading and a young man was introducing his mentor. His mentor was reading. And as he was introducing his mentor, he started to tear up, which I thought was adorable, But I think it embarrassed him because he said, I can't believe I'm up here crying like a pussy. And I kept thinking about that in the days to come, it's not that I'm afraid of vulgarity, I swear like a truck driver. But I was thinking, what a faulty metaphor. Like, how did that part of the body become a metaphor for weakness? So I wrote this. What I think about when someone uses pussy as a synonym for weak. At the deepest part of the deepest part, I rocked shut like a stone. I'd climbed as far inside me as I could. Everything else had fallen away. Midwife, husband, bedroom, world, quaint concepts. My eyes were clamshells. My ears were clapped shut by the palms of the dead. My throat was stoppered with bees. I was the fox caught in the trap. And I was the trap. Chewing a leg off would have been easier than what I now required of myself. I understood I was alone in it. I understood I would come back from there with the baby, or I wouldn't come back at all. I was beyond the ministrations of loved ones. I was beyond the grasp of men. Even their prayers couldn't penetrate me. The pain was such that I made peace with that. I did not fear death. Fear was an emotion, and pain had scalded away all emotion. I chose. In order to come back from there with the baby, I had to tear it out at the root. Understand, I did this without the aid of my hands. Oh my God, I just flipped my eyes over to the comments and someone wrote pussy power. That's so great. Raquel, awesome. Okay, let's see. Does anyone have a request? I want to read Salvage at the end. Maybe I want to read like one longer kind of narrative piece, but I see the comments saying, so if anybody has a request, feel free to type it in, and otherwise I'm going to make a pick.
Drop the mic, someone is saying.
That's so sweet. All right, I'm going to read one that, so these pieces are creative nonfiction, and it's actually important to me that I'm working in the realm of truth. It was kind of, liberating in a weird way, because my training, of course, is in poetry, and we always talk about, oh, the speaker in this poem. And, if you had seen me read, you might think like, oh, that speaker sounds a lot like Beth Ann, and sometimes, of course, it is, and it would be, but we couldn't say it. I think weirdly, hope it's okay to say this, but in the age of Trump, I also was interested in facts. I just felt like dwelling in facts. Facts were comforting. So I showed these pieces to everybody that I wrote about. I wanted people to sign off on them. I didn't want any bad experiences when the book came out, and I wanted the facts to be accurate. This next piece I'm going to read, it might be hard to imagine it being a fact, because it moves kind of segues into poetry. Tomorrow in the craft class, I'm going to talk about 10 tips for writing tiny text. And one thing I'm going to talk about is how they can kind of challenge genre. So this one's called The Visitation. I remember being in the car on the way to my sister's surprise funeral. In the back seat, I think. I can't imagine who was driving. At a stop sign, my head flickered. My head swiveled to a flicker in the roadside greenery. A fox, poking its snout from between two bushes. I thought, or chose to think, that is my sister. That is my sister, come back in animal form to tell me it's okay. She's okay. I'll be okay. But it was not okay. She was not okay. I would not be okay. I would not be okay for so long that when okay arrived, it couldn't place me. It looked right past the veil of shivering leaves, my long red snout, my gloved paws swiping tears into my tiny black mouth. Okay, And so it looks like I got 2 requests. I'm going to read one on 83 and then I'm going to read one on 85. So this one is actually about my memory of what it was like to be a reader as a kid, because I was so intent on reading that the world would truly disappear around me. And I read all the time. I mean, Alex in her beautiful introduction mentioned that I just gave a TED talk on reading and how it increases empathy. Reading is something, you know, I do every day. It's a central part of my life. But if I was reading and you were to call my name, I would hear you. And I think partially that's just, you know, becoming a parent, and, you know, you always have to be aware if someone needs you. And partially maybe it's just having a brain that gets like more diverse and therefore weaker. But I do miss that incredible place of immersion where nothing else existed. The entire world fell away. So I'll read that. Thank you for the request. Now I glance up the first time they call my name. When I was a girl with a book in my hand, I could go to a place so deep no one could follow. No one cared to, except my mother, an affectionate woman who smarted at her lack of companionship. She must have fretted to see me wading out, leaving her behind. She must have stood on the shore and wrung her hands, the waves retreating, the sand beneath her feet eroding grain by grain by grain. She must have felt bereft to see her own dear daughter sinking, even the long dark locks, eel graceful. Sometimes in the deep, I'd hear an echo for a long time before I recognized that what I'd been hearing was my name. My mother calling my human name. Yes, Mom? I'd lift the globes of my eyes. It's time to set the table, honey. Okay. I'd place the book belly down and rise, though I could see, we both could see, dinner was still a good way off. And this one is called What I Learned in Grad School, and it's actually a little bit bitchy, but you know, there is, you know, mostly graduate school is about finding your people and building community. And, you know, I still have readers from my grad school program, and I think that y'all will too. I mean, you know, I know that you guys just got boxes to celebrate and bring you together with popcorn and all the other stuff. And, you know, I think really one of the most valuable things that can happen in grad school is becoming involved in your cohort and figuring out who's a good reader for you and becoming a good reader for other people and learning to trust each other with your work. That is all a big part of it. It's also true that I probably shouldn't romanticize graduate school as I tend to do. I mean, I met my honey on the first day of graduate school, so, you know, gotta like it. But I probably shouldn't romanticize it and make it seem like a happy, easier time, because I also remember sometimes competition and rivalry, you know, everyone trying to figure out who was publishing where and, you know, being stingy or difficult about it. So the title is What I Learned in Grad School, and I kind of wanted the title to like make people think I was gonna talk about all this important stuff, and instead this is what it says. What I learned in grad school. Sometimes in grad school, we'd sit around talking about who was publishing what, where. This always ended badly. Bitter feelings all around. Once a rival poet, we were all suddenly rivals, confessed he had a secret font. He called it the Publish Me font. He claimed that every time he submitted poems in this font, they got accepted. Of course, we asked him the name of this font, but he smugly declined to share. So I get my revenge all these years later, right? I am going to end with two. One is a little bit longer, it's 2 pages, and then one is 2 sentences. And then I hope that you guys have some questions for me, or you want to talk or chat. And also it's kind of fun that I'll be able to talk with you guys tomorrow about my experience of writing macro memoirs and stuff I learned. And you can maybe share with me some stuff you learned because you've been writing them too. So I wanted to read this piece called Salvage. I wrote it for my father-in-law who passed away 2 years ago. He was a wonderful man. He was a really beautiful, beautiful man. And the book is dedicated to him. Salvage. Tommy's parents wave from the porch as our minivan pulls up. His dad smiles. And that's when I see he's missing about half of his teeth. Before retiring a few years back, Gerald was a mechanic. During high school, he'd apprenticed at his uncle's garage, then serviced Army vehicles while stationed in Germany, then returned home and kept fixing cars. Worked from can to can't, worked Saturdays, feeding himself into the maw of busted trucks in unair-conditioned Alabama, feeding a wife and 3 kids. Eventually, he'd own his own shop, Franklin Automotive. In addition to repairs, he had a line on totals. Wrecks the insurance company didn't consider worth fixing. Gerald considered otherwise. He'd buy 2 or 3 of the same model at Salvage auction and Frankenstein them together. Technically, he wasn't allowed to sell them, branded title and all that, but he figured there was no harm in it, as long as the customer knew. He loved to negotiate, and that man could sell an icebox to an Eskimo. 20 years before, I'd bought my first car from him after Tommy and I were engaged. I drove it, a black Cherokee, for 4 years, but it was haunted. Before he cobbled it together, I'd made the mistake of wandering the scrapyard and discovered the salvaged Jeeps. I stepped over the witchgrass and peered into the badly front-ended wreck. Dangling from a spider-webbed windshield, a clump of long blonde hair. Gerald's body, 82, is the one chassis he can't repair. Shingles, macular degeneration, hypertension, a spot on his kidney that needs watching, pneumonia, asthma, steroids for the asthma. So many small parts failures. And now, the teeth. He'd stopped going to the dentist years ago. Finally, got the rotten ones pulled. Gerald sighs as we lower ourselves into the living room's recliners. New teeth, he's been told, will set him back a pretty penny. How much? We ask. 16,000. He pauses. Wish I knew how much use I'd get out of him. He fiddles with his inhaler. How much longer I got here below, you reckon? How many meals I got left? Tommy, Tommy's mom, and me, what can we do but shrug? Don't need a full set, he says, addressing the ceiling, as if bargaining, as if God's scrapyard is lousy with spare teeth, all reasonable offers considered. This, coming from a man who's worked 6 days a week for over 60 years. Alls I need's enough to chew a steak. So that's Gerald. And the last piece that I'll read you, although if you have anything else you want to hear, feel free to put it in the chat room while we're doing questions. Last piece I'll read is that little 2-line one that I promised you. That piece was called Salvage. This piece is called Addendum to Salvage. Won $1,000 in a literary contest for one of these essays. Bought my father-in-law a tooth. Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm just going to pretend I'm hearing like rousing applause and y'all are like throwing money on the stage right now.
They are, Beth. They are.
Oh, Michael, you're so cute.
Oh my God, I'm crying. I've been crying for like 20 minutes. I even had to get up and go and mop myself up or mop up myself. Beth Ann, you are so amazing. And to read to like a non-audience, which you had a totally riveted audience, but you didn't see them and you were so amazing. And we can't thank you enough. And we promise to have you back live if you will come. And when you can actually see all of our happy faces.
Absolutely. I would love to see you in person. And, you know, Jen still owes me a disco. So,
yeah, Jen has to step up, man. Okay. All right. So we have a lot going on. We have questions.
Was I muted?
I'm the one in charge of this, I think.
Well, Elizabeth Bishop is in this chat room.
I know she's come back just for you. Just for you.
She died the year I was born, 1971. So I always wanted to think that her like spirit went into me.
It totally did. Oh my God. Yeah, of course, obviously. All right, everybody's saying bravo, bravo. Bravo, rousing applause, standing ovation, clapping, clapping. You are amazing. Tossing roses. That was phenomenal. So have you lulled us into a false sense of security with laughter, and then you made me sob. From our beautiful Brooks, one of our graduates. So incredible. You're a fantastic reader. Aggie says, awesome to hear these pieces in your voice. And Mary says, I forgot how much I loved Salvage and Addendum to Salvage. Marissa says, that was amazing. Thank you. We're all ready to dance with you. That was wonderful. Bravo. Okay, guys, but let's have questions for Beth Ann. We thank you for lauding her. She deserves the lauding. Okay.
There's also some questions in the Q&A. See the Q&A at the bottom?
Oh, yeah. Oh, good.
Yeah.
The two things. All right. No, we're good.
You guys can ask those in person. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So answer live. I don't know. My thing's
Okay, so I can do that. Should I read the question and then answer it, Jen?
Yeah, great idea. Yeah.
Okay, so
what is there about living and working in the South that people up north don't understand?
Yeah, thank you, Charles, for that good question. So I am originally from the Midwest, but like I mentioned, I met Tommy first day of graduate school. And in 2001, when our baby, who is now in college, was this big, like 5 weeks old, we moved to Oxford, Mississippi. That's where I live now. I teach here at the university, for Tommy to be the John and Renee Grisham Writer in Residence for the year. It's supposed to be 9 months, except we fell in love with it and we have stayed here ever since. Anne owes me a visit, so she's gonna have to take my word for it, but Oxford itself is a really literary town. It's Faulkner's hometown, as you probably know. His house is still here. It's also just a center for writers, and I love being around other writers. I love that, kind of creative exchange. So I feel like living here, I get this like strangely cosmopolitan university town, but also the good stuff about the South, which for me is emphasis on family, storytelling, and music. And those are some things I think have to do with both like the Scotch-Irish settlers, because my family originally is Irish, and those are some things that are associated with Ireland, and also the African-American people who, have stayed in Mississippi. Mississippi is 37% African-American. It's the highest percentage across the country. It is also a very contentious state with a lot of problems. And one thing that I've accepted about living here is that I'll have to work hard to help slowly nudge it forward every way I can. And I understand, you know, even being granted the title of poet laureate, you know, associates me officially with Mississippi in a way that does give me some pause, but I'll just try to use this position as I can to help Mississippi nudge forward. But I do love it here, and I do love the South. So Charles, I don't know if you asked because you haven't been here or you have been here, but either way, thank you for that nice question. Okay, so then Tom says, I am also a Tom and had an ex-boss named Colin, no way, who I often wanted to throw out a window. No way, Tom, I love you. What is it like writing a book with your spouse? So the question comes in the end, but I'm already feeling like, Tom, when I come out there for the disco, you better save me a dance. What is it like writing a book with your spouse? Fun. It's fun. I mean, writing is lonely. And so you guys are finding a way around that right now with your MFA program. You're finding community and you're finding a way to like keep your motivation and set deadlines and check in with each other. I encourage you, when you leave your MFA program, to find a way to keep that up. Because someone's organizing it for you right now, it seems easy enough. Or actually, it seems like a burden, right? To have these deadlines. It's like, oh God, this is due, this is due. So the crazy thing is then, and I know y'all were writers before you got to the program, so you've been practicing writers for a while, you know this, but the world is not interested in you clearing time out of your daily schedule to take care of yourself or maintain a rich creative life. The world is not going to say, oh, did you write today? Did you create today? Did you think today? Were you thoughtful? Were you contemplative? The world has one question for you: confirm purchase. You know, that's it, you know? So if you're going to be the person who maintains that spiritual life and the creativity that would allow you to write something, it's going to be because you choose it, you know? And it's going to be an act of will. So to write with somebody, for me, for that time period, was really lovely because I was in it with someone and it felt very intimate. And Tommy and I'd been married, you know, forever before we started that novel. We'd been married 17 years. Like, I thought there was nothing left to discover. And yet we still learned a lot about each other. And I loved it. And then going on book tour was so fun because, you know, people like to complain about book tour. I'm going to say, you know, bullshit basically, because you're staying in a nice hotel, someone's feeding you dinner. How hard can it be? You know what I mean? Except I concede after a while it can get like a little wearing, but when I was out there with Tommy on the road, every night was like a honeymoon. You know what I mean? Like someone's buying us dinner, you know, like we've got this big hotel room. It was so fun. Although I had a great experience with it, I don't think we'll do it again. And I think it has to do with the fact that we kind of were lucky to hit on a subject matter that appealed to us both. And also we were both not working on a project at the time. You know, it just, all the stars aligned for it to come forward. And I'm glad we did it.
Beth Ann, that answered Raquel's question, which is, would you do it again? So you answered that.
Oh,
But,
yeah.
but I would like to sort of intervene here and ask you, you and I know Jen, and I know many of the people listening to you tonight, how do you balance all of the stuff? You're a writer, teacher, mother, wife, mother of 3 fabulous kids, but I feel like sometimes women do a little more balancing or juggling. No offense to our wonderful, we have the best guys at this program, but I'm just wondering how you would answer that.
Yeah, and I actually think that's the #1 hardest thing. And while I appreciate and accept that you're taking a moment to like praise the good dudes in the program, and I myself also have a good husband, I still think it's harder for women because of society's expectations, right?
Yes,
like you can have an awesome husband, but like if you go out, someone is still going to turn to you, the woman, and say, oh, where are your kids? Who's babysitting for your kids? Or, you know what I mean? Like, it's just that, you know, like that's still in existence. If something goes wrong, you're the one who's going to look bad. You know what I mean? Like if your kid is a mess on school picture day and like has like this stained shirt and the food on his face, like people are going to be like, did you see what Beth Ann's kid wore to picture day? You know what I mean? They don't say it to Tommy, probably because Tommy also has food on his face. Kidding. But I honestly think to find the balance is the single hardest part of every day. and is the way for all the women writers that I know. One thing I've done is a little bit lower my standards, and I kind of recommend it. Like if you can give up your standards being really high in every area and just kind of focus on the most important things. So, you know, there are a lot of things I just don't do or don't do well. I used to never do social media, but my editor made me get on Facebook. Although if I wasn't on Facebook, I wouldn't be able to keep up with Annabelle. So, you know, there's some good parts of it. But you know, like I actually decided it's okay with me if my kids don't wear matching clothes to school. Like I just let them pick out their own clothes. And it sounds stupid, but like I'm giving up some things, like, but some things are important, like weirdly cooking a good family dinner. That's how I want to spend my time.
Yeah.
I prioritize working out because it keeps me sane. But for example, I don't feel the need to put on makeup, you know, unless I'm doing like a really fancy event. Like I thought, I kind of want that 15 minutes back in my life. So I've lowered my standards. I'm not as like put together and professional in some ways as I had been, but I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
But it's not easy. And how do you do it? I mean, you're asking me, and look at what you do, you know, like what's your trick?
No, I think that's it. I mean, prioritizing and giving up sort of, and like what your mom taught you were supposed to do.
Right.
You know,
That's
just
right.
sort of saying, yeah, it's not that way right now. Or, I mean, I always say, if I can have 2 hours a day with my writing, I can do almost, I'll be superwoman. If I don't get those, I feel very cranky and frustrated. So I think for women to carve out 2 hours a day when men are like, oh, but I work all day and I couldn't possibly right now. You know, I just think, I have figured out the 2 hour a day rule and it works for me. I could be writing more if I had a different schedule, but I don't want to miss the babies growing up and, you know.
So one of the most horrifying pieces of advice I ever got happened in grad school, back to like what I learned in grad school. I was in a class and one of the students asked our female professor, who will remain nameless, about women poets having children. And she said, every child you have is 3 books you won't write.
Oh,
I know. But you know what? It's not true. It was going to take me 20 years to figure out. And now, you know, how can I even tell her? But you know, I think my female students are, you know, have no sense that they have to give up anything. You know what I mean? Like they really feel like that they're confident they can do it all. And that's what I want them to think, you know? Yeah,
right. Exactly.
I like the 2 hours a day rule though. And also the other bit of wisdom there is figuring out what is your minimum magic? You know what I mean? Like what are the, like the small things that you have to be you, and then you can give it the rest away once you've filled it up, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I can talk about some of that another time off this Zoom thing. Okay. How did you figure out the sequence of the pieces and heating and cooling? I think everybody wants to know that. Thank you, Aggie, for asking that. That's a great question.
Well, it was hard. So what happened was when I realized I was writing this book, I thought I would write 100 pieces. And I picked 100 because I know of a couple books that have 100 pieces in them. Like there's this British guy, his name is Dan Rhodes. He wrote 100 pieces that are all 100 words. And you know, I kind of love that. And Joy Williams has a book with 100 small pieces. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to write 100 pieces. So I sent it to my editor at Norton. And
we have
she
the same
said,
editor, Beth. Yeah.
Oh, Jill Bylowski?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she actually spoke to us last year. So they all know.
Oh, no way. Oh, good. Yeah. So she gave me a good piece of advice, but she just said, it's too much. There's too muchness here. And I said, well, what should I cut? You know, what are the weaker pieces? And she said, it's not even that you need to cut the weaker pieces. You just need to figure out how to close it down a little bit. And what I realized is, you know, there were too many threads in my life because I wanted the book to have all the emotions. I didn't just want to tell like one, like, you know, about, for example, my sister's death, like, and have it be one book about my sister's death. I do know books that tell one arc and they're beautiful for what they can accomplish, but I'm kind of greedy. I want all the emotions. I want all the feels, as the kids say. So, all the emotions, but also myself at different periods of my life, like as a girl, as a adolescent, you know, as a, you know, adult, my different roles, like my role as a mother, as a lover, as a feminist, as a person walking around on earth, you know, there's so much of it. And then I love to travel and I get really inspired by travel. So there'd be like one piece set in Prague and, you know, one piece set in Japan or whatever. And ultimately those traveling pieces, even though to me they're all traveling pieces, there were too many locales. So I cut those and that helped. And then every time I had a relationship that didn't come back up, I tried to cut a lot of those and just kind of, you know, strengthen the themes. And so ultimately at the end I had 52 and people think there's like some magic for 52. Like everyone's like, oh, did you pick that because there's 52 weeks in the year, or 52 cards in the deck? Like everyone has all these awesome theories. And I'm like, literally, no, I just counted them up. I'm like, okay, they're 52. That's what I have.
Done.
So, yeah. So then I had the problem of ordering them, like Aggie was asking, and it was really hard. And then ultimately I decided I wanted the book to showcase variety. And I wanted the experience of the book to be an experience of a lot of movement. So I didn't want to like ghettoize like all the one-liners together or all the poems about my mom or the pieces about my sister. You know, I wanted to have as much feeling of going up and down, up and down, up and down, because I wanted the book to be heating and cooling. And I wanted the book to be like life, in which something really sad happens to you and something really good happens to you all in the same day. So I just tried to not have all the long ones together, all the short ones together, any mood together. I tried to deliberately keep it non-chronological and really messy.
That's, I think, one of the strengths, one of the many strengths of the book, though, is that experience of not knowing what's coming next. I really liked that.
Well, thank you.
All right, Emily, this is a great question. How long does it take to write a one-liner?
That is a good question. I don't know, in a weird way, like kind of all your life, but in the other way, not that long, which is to say, one thing I'm going to talk about tomorrow is giving yourself over to low stakes writing and how it can be really freeing to try, you know, doing something like a 1-sentence piece or 10-second essays where you're just generating a lot of them. And, you know, occasionally when we suffer bouts of writer's block, I think it's because we put too much pressure on ourselves. Like, you're like, oh, this better be good. I haven't written anything in 2 months, so this better be good, you know? And weirdly, I think freeing yourself up from the pressure to be good can allow you to be good, because then you can be crazy. So one of the things you can try is doing something really silly. Like, okay, if you really legit have writer's block and you're struggling and you feel bad about it, what if you like set the timer on your phone for an hour and you can't get up until you've written 61 sentence pieces, like one a minute. And then what if 59 of them suck? You know, guess what? You'd have one. And haven't we all spent an hour at our desk and come away with less than one good sentence, you know? So, so writing the one-liners, it really doesn't take that long sometimes, but I throw away a lot. And I don't, if it doesn't work, you can't always necessarily revise it into working. Sometimes it's just not good. Sometimes it's just get rid of it.
Yeah. When you teach, Beth Ann, do you have students do that? Or is that something you do for yourself?
It's just something I do for myself, but I do try to share with them strategies that demystify the writing process, because I don't think it's helpful. Like when people say, oh, you know, I wrote this in one take, in one sitting, and look at this great piece of art. You know what I mean? And people tend to mythologize their own work. And then, you know, I remember even being in college and I had a semester in London and I went to the British Museum. And as stupid as it sounds, you know, in the British Museum, they have all these documents, all these original documents, and there were the lyrics from the Beatles' Yesterday. That iconic, beautiful song. And guess what? The original lyrics sucked. You know what I mean? And they, you know, it's so funny to see how bad they were. And they have the lyrics to, like, I mean, they have the, like, the Magna Carta, like the rough draft of the Magna Carta. You know what I mean? So in a way, it's kind of helpful to see, like, any document that you think like sprang fully formed from someone who's better and smarter and more talented and luckier than you, no, they worked too. And if they have hidden their messy childhoods, if they have erased their false starts and they're putting forward the narrative, like the Sue Generous, like it just sprung from me. No, like it's all work. Let's all work. Let's praise the work and not be focused on product, and go back to, like, you know, the Zen idea of the beginner's brow is a really beautiful idea. And, you know, the word amateur, the root of that is lover. Like, I want to be an amateur, you know, I just want to try, fail better, says Beckett, you know, fail again. Like, let's keep this idea. So I do share with my students, my, you know, my ups and downs of everything, including, you know, I wrote a novel that failed. You know, I wrote a novel that never got published. I had to put it away, and it, you know, it was very painful for me. It was painful personally, and it was painful professionally. And I, you know, spent 1.5 years of my life on it, you know, and it's embarrassing, except, like, probably my students need to know that it's okay to be someone who's also failed, you know? So when they fail, they don't think they're alone.
Yeah, and that's part of, right, part of life, you know.
Oh yes, someone's
okay,
asking me a
so
question.
we don't want to keep you too much longer, but I have a question about how do you find your inspiration? How do you cultivate your muse? And then we're going to talk to you again tomorrow, so we're not going to keep you here longer than what we told you. But can you answer that question?
Yeah, I'll answer that, and then I see Alex had something she needed to say too, so I'll hit you up, Alex. How do I find my inspiration? I would say I try to treat writing professionally. And I just told y'all that I love the idea of being an amateur, but in the one sense of giving myself time at my desk every day. You know, Flaubert said, be regular and ordinary in your everyday life so you can be wild and original in your work. So being regular and ordinary in your everyday life, right? That's like being at your desk, like getting your work done. Like when I was in college, where did poems come from? They came from some boy dumping me, and then me staying up all night crying and smoking and drinking red wine and writing my poems. You know, guess what? That's not sustainable. Like, that's not going to see you through the long haul, you know? So how have I, like, you know, this is a really quiet, sober way of being at my desk in the morning and trying to go there from my dream state, not checking Facebook, not look at my Visa bill, you know, and then using that time to be aware of my work and the stuff I'm reading. That's kind of the long answer for that. And then Alex, what did you want to know about?
Okay.
Alex,
Thank you, Beth Ann, for seeing me. I'm not, due to technology, I'm not allowed to type in the Q&A. And so
sure.
I have questions. I have two, one's kind of shorter. I'll be really quick. I loved your essay in Orion magazine in praise of jet lag.
Oh, thanks.
And I get the sense that you appreciate like transitional and liminal like spaces. And I just wonder like if you can talk a little bit about that. And secondly, once upon a time you thought you were going to be an actress, right? And which is just another way of storytelling, right? And so I wondered how that does or did inform or influence your writing.
Sure, thank you. Both good questions. So the first one, I am interested in transitions. I'm interested in bodily transitions, mental transitions, physical transitions, because I think when people are changing, they're interesting. And I think ideas changing. I think anything that has stasis is in danger of growing stale. So I did write this short essay in praise of jet lag because I also think it's interesting to take a contrary idea, like everyone knows you hate jet lag, but what if you used it to let that dreamy, weird state help you think differently? And if it's something that we're going to experience anyway, what does it have to teach us about ourselves and our brain? And the second question has gone out of my head completely, and I've only had like half a glass of rosé. Can you repeat it?
So once upon a time, you were going to be an actress.
Yes, I was going to be an actress, and I sucked. I sucked so bad. Oh my God, it's so painful. My mom still has the videotapes, like the big fat, like VHS, and she tries to put them in at Christmas, and I'm like, take it off. I can't unsee it. You know, yeah. So I was really bad, and it was painful. But the thing I think that brought me to acting was loving the feel of the words in my mouth, and like Romeo and Juliet, like just thinking about that coming out of your mouth, or the other like great plays. And now I understood that trained my ear. And so performing is important to me as a poet. I love to give readings and I like to share my work, but beyond the ego thing where it's like me, hear my work, listen to me. I love to recite other people's poems, and I've made it a practice to memorize and recite poems. I have an essay about that. I can send it to y'all if you're interested, but you know, it's just something I've done that has trained my ear and educated me in syntax and stocked the warehouse of my brain with powerful imagery, and that feeling of air coming up in your windpipe, and the beauty of the poem, and the poet who chose it so carefully teaching you how to say it has taught me a lot about poetry. And I think that is really the tie to acting. I just think I took a like left turn to find writing.
Well, Beth Ann, everybody wants that essay, so you should not have offered it, because you have to now send it to us.
I'll send it to you. You can share it around.
Yeah, thank you. Beth Ann, I cannot tell you how fabulous you are, but you know I feel that way anyway. And you have been so wonderful to do this in this weird, awkward way, but here are little faces and rectangles loving you. And,
I love seeing your faces in rectangles. Seriously, awesome.
And we cannot wait for tomorrow, so we get to see you again, which we're super excited about.
So am
and when
I.
Tommy returns from fishing, give him a big hug from all of us, not just
I
me,
will.
like 39 hugs. And everybody's saying thank you so much. It was amazing.
Thank you guys so much. Y'all have a great night. I'm looking forward to seeing you tomorrow. And I appreciate the warmth, even with this crazy Zoom thing. I felt y'all looking and listening and being happy. So thank y'all.
Bye, Beth Ann. We love you.
Bye. Bye, Ann.
Thank
Love you. Mhm.